Are you interested in some spicy new deck tech? Well, here's your host, Capital G!
And ladies and gentlemen, Capital G here at it, bringing you Carth the Lion. Thanks again to Lunchbox for the intro. And, well, let's get into the deck. Of course, be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy what we're doing here. And also come join the Discord group, Dungeons and Cardboard. We just launched our Twitter and Instagram accounts, so be sure to check those out as well. Gonna have all of the socials in the description below. As for the deck itself, Carth the Lion. Well, why am I talking about Carth when we literally just finished New Capenna spoiler season? Because I had this deck mostly built right before it hit. So, oops. That said, I did incorporate a little bit of New Capenna into this particular Planeswalker deck because, well, it's Carth the Lion. That's what he cares about is Planeswalkers. Black, green, and 2 for this 3/5 human warrior. And when it enters the battlefield, or a Planeswalker you control dies, you get to look at the top 7 cards of your library. Put a Planeswalker card from amongst them into your hand. The rest go into the bottom of your library in a random order. It also says that Planeswalkers' loyalty abilities you activate cost an additional +1 loyalty to activate, which is amazing. The only card in the game to this point that deliberately modifies loyalty activation costs. So, let's say a loyalty ability costs +2 normally, it's now +3. Does it cost 0? It's now +1. Does it cost -2 loyalty? Well, now it's -1 loyalty, etc., etc. So, we took it to the extreme. We are running a lot of Planeswalkers, so I'm not going to go card by card, but I will point out sort of the key feature of each Planeswalker as we go. On the topic of key cards, of course, if you're running a lot of Planeswalkers, we are going to be running both Vorinclex and Doubling Season, so that when our Planeswalkers come into the battlefield, they will have a double loyalty off the hop. And we're also running a lot of token synergies. Many of our Planeswalkers spit out tokens, so that is what our win con is going to be in this particular build. Before we get to the Planeswalkers, of course, let's get to the supporting cast, all of the artifacts, enchantments, creatures, etc. So, of course, loyalty counters on everything, which means Contagion Clasp. A good way to make one of our opponent's creatures smaller. And, of course, being able to proliferate and add more loyalty counters. Contagion Engine, same deal. Lithoform Engine, this one is here to copy our activated or triggered abilities. Loyalty abilities are activated abilities, so for 2 mana tap and we say +1 of our Planeswalkers, get the extra copies. Coming in from New Capenna, Luxior, Giada's Gift, a good way to kind of accelerate the combat damage part of the plan. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each counter on it. It can be any counter we want, including loyalty counters. Equipped permanent is not a Planeswalker and is a creature in addition to its other types. If I'm wrong, say so in the comments, but while a Planeswalker is a creature, I don't believe it loses loyalty if it takes damage. So, double check that. If I'm wrong, if I'm right or wrong, please confirm in the comments. But either way, being able to turn one of our Planeswalkers into a creature and swing is pretty sweet. It only costs 1 mana to equip to a Planeswalker. It costs 3 mana to equip it to any other creature. But I mean, we're not equipping it to our other creatures. We are equipping it to our Planeswalkers, sure and certain. Moving on to board wipe here, Nev's Disc. Of course we're going to run it. It destroys all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments, which, depending on what we've already put out to the board, could set us back slightly. But it's not going to touch our Planeswalkers at all. And that is the point, isn't it? Rings of Brighthearth here for the same reason as the Lithoform Engine. Except this does not tap, so whenever we activate an ability, as long as it's not a mana producing ability, we can pay 2 mana to copy that ability. And this doesn't tap, so as long as we have the mana, we can use this multiple times a turn. Sol Ring, of course, to help us use that thing multiple times a turn. And of course the Chain Veil to allow us to activate our Planeswalkers an additional time. Moving on to our creatures, we're running the Augur of Autumn. Lets us look at the top card of our library at any time. If it's a land, we can play it off the top. If we control 3 or more creatures with different power, we can cast creature spells from the top. This is only one of 5 creatures in the 99, so we're not too worried about the Coven here. But we are wanting to play lands off the top to accelerate our plan and get sort of the bulk out of the way. So Corsair of Crewfix, of course, helps with that as well. Evolution Sage. Play a land, proliferate, put counters on all of our things that have counters on it. Yes, please. Liliana, who becomes a Planeswalker whenever another non-token creature we control dies. It's a little tricky to flip her, but if, say, Carth dies, for example, we can flip her over. Into, of course, Liliana Defiant Necromancer, which will allow us to force everyone to discard cards, does some reanimation shenanigans, etc. The other flip Planeswalker, as it were, is Nissa Vastwood Seer, who goes and gets us a basic forest card when she comes down. And then if we control 7 or more lands, once we've played a land, so 7 more lands, we play a land, boom. Nissa Sage Animist flips right over for us. Moving on to some enchantments with both Oath of Liliana and Oath of Nissa. So in the case of Oath of Liliana, great control card. 3 mana forces each of our opponents to sacrifice a creature, and then as long as we've had a Planeswalker into the battlefield under our control, we get a zombie. So additional tokens to help block or even go on offense. Oath of Nissa, it's basically a 1 mana cantrip in this deck. For 1 mana, we get to put it down, look at our top 3 cards, reveal a creature, land, or Planeswalker, and put them into our hand. Or at least one of them. Everything else goes back on the bottom. And it's also perfect mana fixing for our Planeswalker spells. A couple of instances with Liliana's Triumph. Obviously, there is more Liliana action to be had in this deck. 2 mana instant, each opponent sacrifices a creature. And if we control a Liliana Planeswalker, each opponent also discards. Pretty sweet. And a Nature's Claim, just a nice clean pop an artifact or enchantment. Yes, its controller gains 4 life. No, we don't actually care. Sorceries, we got a bunch. Culling Ritual will help us ramp up. Destroy each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. We do spit out a bunch of tokens, so yes, we might end up actually killing off a bunch of our tokens with this, but that's fine because it's going to give us a ton of mana to play with. Damnation, of course, destroy all of the creatures. Demonic Tutor, go get whatever card we want. Farseek, go get a Plains, Island, Swamp, or Mountain. We've got a pretty solid mana base I want to show off, so Farseek is good for us here, as is Hour of Promise. Nature's Lore, go get a forest card, put it onto the battlefield. Does not say tapped, keep that in mind. Pest Infestation, it's sorcery speed, but it lets us create a bunch of black and green pests. So, widen the board, destroy some of our opponent's artifacts and enchantments, yes please. Plane-wide Celebration. We can get all of the citizens, or we can return a bunch of permanents from our graveyard to our hand. We can proliferate, and we can gain 4 life, and we can choose this in any combination 4 times. So we can choose proliferate 4 times, or we can create a couple of citizens and return a couple of permanents. Very flexible top-end card. Rampant Growth for, well, the ramp. Sylvan Scrying lets us go get any land we want, and there are some specific ones we would like to have. 3 visits. Search our library for a forest, put it onto the battlefield, yes please. And Whirlwind to destroy all creatures with flying, because that is a little bit of a weakness with this strategy, is that we're not super strong against flying. Let's move on to the lands here before we talk about our Planeswalkers, because we've got 32 Planeswalkers to talk about. So, mana base. And this is where we see a lot of New Capenna. Because I'm running all 5 of these new... I don't know what we want to call them yet. Let's call them... let's call them Hangouts for the time being. So these lands, how they work is that the second they enter the battlefield, there's a trigger where we have to sacrifice it and then go get a basic, in this case, forest, plains, or island. Obviously, we'd be getting a basic forest. I'm running all 5 of these in the deck. You do gain a life, by the way. Let's not overlook the life gain. Sometimes that 1 point of life matters. But yes, I'm running all 5 because we're running 2-color enemy. We can, in concept, run all 5, and these basically go get whatever basics we want. So why not? I'm also running the Cabal Coffers in this one. Cabal Coffers, of course, means, and let's fast forward to Urborg. So each land is a swamp in addition to its other types. Now, this is the synergy I want to point out with those new hangout lands. So we've got our Urborg in play, or even one of our opponents has an Urborg or a Yavimaya, and yes, we are running Yavimaya as well. So let's say we've got one of these out, or our opponents have one of these out, and then we play our Broker's Hideout. We can actually tap the land for mana in response at that point and still go fetch. So I thought it was a cool little synergy. So that is why I decided to run all 5 here. All 5 of them are going to get us another basic out of our deck, and that's limited for us. And again, with Urborg or Yavimaya in play, it just becomes that much better. Cabaret Courtyard, again, another way for us to get a forest specifically. Castle Locthwain, as long as we control a swamp, comes in untapped and gives us the opportunity to draw some cards. Field of the Dead, this is another one of our favorite targets for Sylvan Scrying, because we're running a huge variety of lands in the deck, so let us take advantage of this. 4 regular forests, an interplanar beacon. You can use this to tap for a generic, or we can pay 1, get 2 mana back using the second ability to cast Planeswalker spells. Again, we've got 32 Planeswalkers, so of course. Also, whenever we cast a Planeswalker, we gain a life. Obvious fit here, as is Karn's Bastion, a way to proliferate out of our mana base. Llanowar Wastes taps for generic, or we can tap for colors, but we take damage. That's fine. The Maestro's Theater. This is going to get us a swamp specifically. Obscura Storefront, again, gets us specifically a swamp. Overgrown Tomb. Again, I am not buying into Infinity. Just a heads up on that one. So I won't be scooping up any of these lands. I really like the art for these new versions of the Shocks, but I don't know. I'm not into the unsets personally. Riveters Outlook. This is the only one of these hangout lands that can go get either a swamp or a forest for us. Forest, no covered forests. Again, diversifying the lands specifically to help out our Field of the Dead. Forest, no covered swamps. 4 regular swamps. A Temple of Malady for the Scry. A Temple of the False God for the ramp. We're gonna get to 5 lands, so it'll be easy to get this active here. As we mentioned, Urborg, the War Room, again, card draw right out of the mana base. West Vale Abbey can spit out some tokens for us, or we can turn it into Ormondal. And it's always fun when you do manage to get this flip, let me tell you. It's satisfying. Woodland Cemetery and Woodland Chasm help us with our colors. And as we already mentioned, the Yavimaya is here as well. Alright, now to the main event, the Planeswalkers. And I'll try to highlight the key reason I've chosen these 32 Planeswalkers as we go. I'm not going to read them all out because we'll be here all day if I did. Let's start with Arlen, Voice of the Pack. Spits out wolves. The +1 makes it so that we can easily spit out a ton of wolves. And there's a few other cards that make these kind of tokens as well. Freyleys. Not only does it spit out elves, but it can destroy artifacts and enchantments, and it gives us some card draw. So, lots working for us here. Garruk Relentless. When it has 2 or fewer loyalty counters on him, he transforms. Starts with only 3. Both his abilities are 0, but it spits out wolves. It can also shoot down some smaller creatures. That's fine with me. And when he does flip into Garruk the Veil Cursed, well, these abilities are all awesome. And having Garth as our commander means that these loyalty abilities will make him a lot more durable than he otherwise would be. More Garruk action. Let's make sure I didn't miss anything. Because we've got Garruk Relentless, Garruk Wildspeaker, of course, to untap some lands or spit out some beasts. And hey, even though the alt, the -4, we can use it right away if we have the right board state. Garruk Apex Predator destroys other Planeswalkers, spits out some beasts, destroys some creatures, and that -8 is very achievable only on only the second turn as long as our commander has been out. Garruk Cursed Huntsman spits out a couple of wolves, also destroys creatures and draws us some cards. And the emblem, we can get the emblem right away if we wanted to. Garruk Primal Hunter, again, spits out beasts, draws us some cards. We can actually draw cards and keep them on the battlefield on turn 1 in concept. Garruk Unleashed makes one of our creatures bigger and tramply, or can spit out some more beasts for us. And the -7, if we get there, is it any good? Well, search our library for a creature. That's okay. We don't have a lot of creatures, but they are all useful if we do get them. Jiang Yanggu, this one is from the international decks, or I forget the proper name of them. But this is one of the face cards. And this is what introduced us to Mowu. So yeah, for free basically, we're going to get a 3/3 Mowu, and we can also give our creatures +2/+2. I thought that's kind of fun. Also the fact that our -5 is usable right away, where we can have target creature gain trample and +X/+X, where X is the number of lands we control. Yes, please. Liliana Vess, forced to discards, lets us tutor, all sorts of good stuff for us here. Liliana of the Dark Realms to go get us our swamps. And that -3, well, now becomes a -2 and can shoot down some creatures for us. We can also get to that -6 very, very quickly. Liliana Dreadhorde General. We're spitting out so many tokens that, yeah, we're going to have tokens that die and draws cards. So yes, off the hop, that's already good. Again, we can reach that ultimate on turn 2 if our commander is out. So yes, please. Liliana the Necromancer, again, just value town, forcing our players to lose life directly, getting us our rare note. We don't have a lot of creatures, but the ones we do have, we'd love to get them back, so let's do that. Lolf Spider Queen. 0, you draw a card and lose 1 life. Well, actually, no, it's not +1, so I like that. Also gives us some spiders with Menace and Reach. The Reach is important because, again, flyers are a big vulnerability that we have, so Lolf covers that partially for us. Nissa, Voice of Zendikar, spits out some plants, gives the whole team +1/+1 counters, and gives us another spot to draw cards. Nissa, Who Shakes the World, especially with Llanowar in play. This is a monster. Whenever we tap a forest mana, add an additional green. It's a powerhouse. Being able to turn our lands into creatures if we wanted to is a thing. I don't really want to use it too often because, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't like the idea of my lands getting swept up by a board wipe, but there you go. It is the risk we take when we run this. Nissa, Worldwaker. Again, turns one of our lands into a creature. It's permanently becomes so we have to be careful of that. But the other ability, untap up to 4 target forests. Yes, please. I love that ramp. And that -7 lets us get all our basics out of the deck and turn them into 4/4 creatures with trample. Not with haste, though. They're not hasty, so that's something we have to be careful for. Open Nixilis Reignited, draws us a card. It can destroy creatures. And that emblem we can get to, again, on turn 2. Have it so that whenever a player draws a card, they lose 2 life. Nixilis of the Black Oath. Unfortunately, the new one doesn't fit because it's black and red. So we have to go with the classics here, but that's alright because the classics give us a 5/5 flying demon. I'll take that. And of course, this one destroys a creature and its controller draws 2 cards. Professor Onyx. She looks familiar, doesn't she? Again, we've seen our instants and sorceries. We don't have too many, but whenever we do get to cast them, each of our opponents lose 2 life and we gain 2 life. Not running the Chain of Smog combo in this one, but you could if you wanted to. But I mean, the loyalty abilities themselves are good. Looking at the top 3 cards of our library, putting 1 into our hand and the rest into our graveyard. That's perfectly serviceable. The minus ability. Each opponent sacks a creature of the greatest power amongst creatures that player controls. Yes, please. Shoot down all of our opponent's biggest things. I like that. Sorin Markov. Each target opponent's life total becomes 10. That's why we run Sorin Markov to begin with. The fact that our commander makes it so that we can actually activate this twice on consecutive turns is pretty sweet too. Sorin the Mirthless gets us some vampire tokens with flying and lifelink. So that's the main event here. Can also draw some cards too. Tevesh Zat spits out some thralls for us. And also gives us a place to sacrifice our creatures or planeswalkers. And that is my cat Sushi, who's being annoying in the background. Sounds like she got the message. Anyways, you may sack another creature or planeswalker. If you do, draw 2 cards, then draw another card if the sacrifice permanent was a commander. We don't want to sacrifice our commander. We don't need to. We've spread out so many tokens that we get all of the value off of this. Ugin the Ineffable. Colorless spells cost 2 less to cast. We don't have too many of those, but that's fine. It turns the top card of our library into face down 2/2s that we can put back into our hand whenever they leave the battlefield for any reason. So yes, please. Also, being able to destroy colored permanents is nice. Speaking of getting rid of things with colored permanents, Ugin the Spirit Dragon. Exile each permanent with convert mana cost X or less. That's 1 or more colors. Obviously been a long time staple of our format, so yes, of course we're going to run it here. And we can actually alt on the second turn this is out. As long as we've got our commander in play, +2 one time, zap a target. Because it's going to be +3, we'll have 10 loyalty. And at that point, as long as Ugin doesn't take a hit between one turn and the next, we can activate the ultimate and get all of that value. Vivien Reed. She's going to look for creatures or lands on the plus, but the minus lets us shoot down artifacts, enchantments, or flying creatures, and that's why she's here. Get those flyers out of the way. Vivien, Monks' Advocate, spits out some beast tokens. We give those beast tokens reach, which is nice. And Vivien, Nature's Avenger. Put 3/1/1 counters on up to 1 target creature. Sure, make our tokens bigger. Well, I like the sound of that. Or -1 reveal cards from the top of our library until we hit a creature, put it into our hand. We don't have a lot of creatures, but this lets us go get the ones that we do have, which is awesome. The -6 target creature gets +10/+10 and trample until end of turn. Imagine we copy that with our Rings of Brighthearth. That sounds like magical Christmas land to me. Vraska destroys non-land permanents. Can eventually spit out some assassins for us. Vraska Golgari Queen. Destroys non-land permanents over converted mana cost 3 or less. Yes, please. Also gives us a way to, sack something to gain life and draw a card. The -9 still takes a lot of work to get there, even with our commander, but when we do, it's pretty sweet too. Wrenn and Seven will wrap it up for us. 5 mana for this 5 loyalty planeswalker. We get to reveal the top 4 cards of our library and keep all our lands in our hand. Put the rest into our graveyard, so a little risky there. 0, put any number of lands from our hand onto the battlefield tapped. Yes, please. -3, create a tree folk with power toughness equal to the number of lands we control. That's why we're running it. Getting all of them big tree folk. The -8, return all permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. So again, with our commander, we could actually use the +1 on the first turn. It will bring him up to 7 loyalty. As long as he's not been touched and our commander remains on the battlefield, we could -8 and get everything back. On turn 2. I think that's really sweet. Yes, we end up... we actually even get Wrenn and Seven back, which is nice. So if you activate the -8 and it goes to the graveyard, well, we get it back. Turns out that chains very, very nicely. And there we have it, Carth the Lion. Bit of a longer video again because planeswalkers are complicated and wordy. Coming down the pipe, of course, I do have a first 10 video coming up next, as well as another deck tech, this time really heavily featuring New Capenna. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed what we had today, and I will see you all again next time. Bye for now.